heard that one of the secrets to the success of a talk like this is to do lots of math with the audience, especially just before lunch. So let's try that. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. First of all, how much, in terms of number of hours every day, do you believe that you're engaged with various types of technology? Take a moment and think about that. Maybe 8 hours, 10, 12 hours, 17, 24? Anybody for 24 hours? How about 56? Or 72? Or 90? Or 100 hours per day? Now, a lot of you are going to say, well, that's some funny new math you've got there, Deano. There aren't more than 24 hours in a day. And in some sense, you're right, but here's the key. What you have to do is look at the cumulative overlapping effects of all of the technologies that you use and measure those. Because one of the biggest impacts of technology is its ability to direct our attention to it. So if you take each and every type of technology, and I mean every one, your streaming music and your Netflix that you're watching inappropriately at work, or the other types of technologies, I have a smartwatch that may vibrate during this very talk, add them all up independently, overlapping, that may direct your attention at any time, and you too may find that you have 100 hours or more per day. I give talks like this all across the country and from every age group, from upper elementary into middle school, into high school, as well as college. And every time I give one of these talks, we do this measurement exercise where we detail out all of the uses of the technology, we add them all up, and at the end of that addition, there is always, without exception, at least one student who has 100 hours or more per day of technology engagement. Now, you might question my math, so let me give you a little bit of an example. I'm going to use Abby today as my example. And I met Abby a few years ago in Dallas, Fort Worth area at a high school, freshman at the time, and she was in a college preparatory class. We did this measurement exercise, and Abby announced to the whole class that she had 138 hours a day of technology engagement. I have to admit, I had to chuckle a little bit. It seemed a little high, right? Abby, how do you get these numbers? And Abby, without missing a beat, reaches into her backpack and produces 2 phones. All right, Abby, let's start with the 2 phones. What's with the 2 phones? Well, that's my dumb phone, right? And that's for texting with my parents and calling my grandma. And then this is my smartphone. And my smartphone, which, by the way, she added she was not allowed to have a data plan, which I think under the circumstances is probably quite wise. But she did say that she could access the internet from anywhere. She had wireless at school, she had wireless at home, her friends' homes, the library, coffee shops, endless access to the technology. 138 hours per day with Abby. I think it's important to take a look at some of the effects, right? What are the effects of Abby and her friends and her family if they're really engaged with this much technology? And there are some major effects that we're going to take a look at today. One of the first is our attention spans. And you'll be shocked to learn that our attention spans are not growing, okay? And in some ways, we can all appreciate this, right? I mean, 15 to 20 minutes for one of these talks is long enough. For some of you, it's too long. Your attention span is difficult to hold. Well, imagine if we have to sit listening to a lecture for 50 minutes in a row without a break. So on one level, I can appreciate that, okay? But on the other hand, think about the impact on attention spans in a variety of other ways. And I'll use an example. I asked the organizers of this event how wide this stage is, and it is 36 feet. A car traveling 30 miles an hour will cover this entire stage space in less than 1 second. Less than 1. So imagine that you get that vibration from your phone and you look down, and even if you just glance and look back up again, think about how long that takes. Plus the time it takes to actually read a text message that just interrupted you. And unfortunately, this has a real-life implication to it. Because I have a friend, Jack, who teaches at another university, and when I saw him last year, he had a cast on his leg. And it's because a student who was texting and driving literally ran him over. And he feels very fortunate that he noticed out of the corner of the eye what was about to happen, and he was able to step away from what could have been a very deadly impact. So that's number one. Number two, multitasking. If anybody in this room does any hiring, you have probably seen every resume. I have amazing multitasking skills, right? Amazing. It's right at the top of the resume. It's a myth, okay? It is straight up a myth. There is a terrific book called Brain Rules by John Medina. And one of the things that he talks about in this fabulous book is he says that it takes a fraction of a second. Now, granted, we're talking tenths of a second, but it takes a fraction of a second to be able to shift from one task to another. Okay? We can't literally do two things at the same time. So even though we're quick at switching, it still takes concentration, right? And he also reports that for those who are working on a task when they are constantly interrupted, it produces a 50% longer time frame to accomplish the task. And that has an accompanying 50% increase in error rates as a result, just for multitasking. And then, and this is particularly close to my heart as an educator, as a college educator in particular, and that's deep learning. I'm very concerned that my students are not deeply learning. We kind of joke. We have a little joke in the academy. It's like, oh, I give a reading assignment, but they don't really read it, okay? I actually want them to read it and to comprehend it and to think critically about it. That takes deep learning. That takes concentration. The International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health in 2018 ran a study where they examined the impact of using social media or other technologies, the cell phone is the biggie here, while they are trying to deeply learn, and they found that they just couldn't do it effectively. You can't deeply learn when you're constantly being interrupted. And I don't know about you, but if I'm on the surgical table, I don't want my surgeon to go, oh, wait, what's that text message say over there? Or if they didn't pay enough attention in anatomy class, let's Google the answer to that question. So this is one particular set of effects. Let's go back to Abby's story, because I gotta be honest, I was really curious to learn more about Abby. I said, Abby, you've got these 2 cell phones. Tell me, how else do you get all of these hours? And she says, well, I have 7 social media accounts. 7 social media accounts. I said, okay, so she starts naming them off. And she's got the Facebooks, which only old people use, right? She's got the Facebook, and she has the Twitter, she has the Pinterest, she has, of course, YouTube, she has Instagram, she has Snapchat, she has Finsta, which is your fake Instagram account. You know, the one you share with your parents to hide your real one. She has all of these different social media accounts. And what's really interesting about this, and what makes it so dangerous potentially, or at least impactful, is that at least theoretically, all of those social media accounts consist of real people, real human beings on the other end. But here's the thing, and I love to use this particular analogy because I think it's fun to watch zombie shows. I kind of like being scared a little bit, so I do have some favorite programs and movies that I've seen with zombies in them. We get that it's fiction. I think we get that it's fiction, right? I mean, there's a couple of people in this room who have a zombie apocalypse plan for every venue they visit. And you want to find out who they are at lunch and befriend them, okay? But outside of that, though, we all get that there is not going to be a zombie that's going to come behind that curtain. It's not going to devour me. And if they do, you know that you have a better chance than I do of escaping, because they're going to attack me first and you're going to have a chance to leave, right? But we get that's all fiction. That's all fun. Here's the thing. Abby's 7 social media accounts, all of your social media accounts, are fiction. They are fiction. They represent reality, but they are carefully curated and selected for the needs of the user. Okay? If you take that selfie, and I've seen some of you do it, you're going to take 75 of them to get the right one before you post it on social media accounts. You all know who you are. I love the people who say, look, no filters. Okay? That's because we think that represents reality. Now, I've already told you that I cross the entire country doing these kinds of talks, and I have been in Boston and Los Angeles, Dallas. I did a session in schools in Salt Lake City, Utah just this past year. And what happened in Salt Lake City is I took a picture of the mountains. If you've ever been to Salt Lake City, they are beautiful snow-capped mountains. and I put those on social media. Guess what I was doing when I took that picture and posted it online? I took it from a classroom. And I said to the students, I'm going to go take a picture of the mountains, because that's as close as I got to the mountains during that particular trip. But in the social media world, I'm in the mountains. I'm having a great time. I'm hiking and enjoying the world. And the reality that I have actually is that I'm in a classroom. And so this is just as much fiction as the zombie that's going to walk behind that curtain. And we need to be able to understand that. And it's so hard to do because there are real people represented on the other side of that. Okay? So let's take a look at what some of the effects are of what I would refer to as distortion of reality. First of all, we have a tendency to exist in our own social media chambers, our echo chambers. And so when we look at the media, it sets our agenda and it reinforces our pre-existing attitudes, values, and beliefs. And you don't have to look much further than our current political climate to realize what's happening with that. And I'm not casting blame here. The point is to be aware. There are individuals on my social media feed, I know for sure, who regard some fictions as reality and who will take facts and decry them as fiction. I have some people who will read a headline of a story and instead of reading the entire story, will post it on social media for all of their followers to see. We're reacting to headlines. We're reacting to things that reinforce our existing values instead of thinking critically and engaging because we live in this media bubble. Another example of this media distortion. How many of you have ever gone into a room, seen a group of kids, or perhaps even adults? I've seen this today already, and everybody's looking down at their phone. Well, the journal AI and Society in 2016 came up with a name for this. It's called absent presence. Think about that. Absent presence. You're there, but you're not really there. And one of the concerns of the authors is that we lack a display of empathy as a result. It looks like we don't care about what's going on with the other person. We're not really engaged in dialogue with that other person. And that can be damaging to our interpersonal relationships. And it's not our intention, but it's the net result. And then the last impact that I want to share is on our psychology, our self-concept. And this is a little bit sobering. But the reality is that the American Psychological Association in January of 2019 posted the results of a study since 2000 that shows that we have increasing rates of suicide. 30% increase since the year 2000. Suicide rates are now the second leading cause of death between those who are aged 10 to 34. The APA's Journal of Abnormal Psychology also released a set of studies in March of 2019 that shows us that the rates of major depression have also gone up over the last decade. And for the two key age groups, from 12 to 17, the major rates of depression went up 52%, and for 18 to 25, 63% in just a decade. Now, one of the things that some of you may react to is go, okay, it's time to throw away the phone, okay? In fact, I had one parent, I sometimes do special parent sessions in the evenings, and I had one parent who said, I think I'm just going to take my daughter's phone and I'm going to lock her in her room until she turns 18, okay? We all understand this is not realistically a solution, right? And the goal here today is not to create fear. I am not trying to freak you out or scare you. What I'm trying to do, to be perfectly honest, is just raise awareness. It's just like I tell the students in my sessions. I don't want you to necessarily stop using all the technology you're using. I just want you to be aware of what the effects are. This is what the research is telling us today. And by the way, there are a whole bunch of other effects I haven't even talked about today. Privacy, for example, and data mining, and all of those things, the effects on our political communication, the effects on journalism, and a recent concern of mine is the proliferation of hate speech online. There are all kinds of other effects that I could talk about, but I only have a limited amount of time. But the key is, don't be afraid of it. I want you to think about it and process it. So I do have some solutions that I'm going to go ahead and offer to you. The first thing is that I would suggest you do is sit down with your family, and I want you to conduct a little technology audit. Okay, if you don't like the word audit, technology review. All right, all I want you to do is the math that I was talking about before. I want you to have a task on one particular day where you say to your whole family, we're all going to journal. We're going to write down every technology we use and how often we use it. And here's what you're going to look for. There are 3 key things. Write down what the technology is. I want you to write down how you are using it. And then this is the third and key piece of the puzzle. How do you feel? As you're interacting with it, how do you feel? And after you interact with the technology, how do you feel? Do you feel stressed? Do you feel depressed? There's a lot of the studies that look at when you flip through your social media scrolling, your feed, you find, oh, you feel good for a while, but eventually it wears off and suddenly you feel depressed and anxious. Take note of how you are feeling, okay? Just because I told you about the results of those studies does not mean that it affects everybody universally, right? I have a lot of media and technology that I use on a daily basis, and I'm not suggesting that I'm putting myself in any of those particular categories. But I do think you can take note and take that technology audit. Then here's what you do with it. You have to sit down and discuss it. Okay? You have got to have an open dialogue about how media is used, not for the purpose of telling your sons or daughters, stop using it. That's not helpful. Instead, say, please take a look at how you are using it and let's talk about it. And by the way, I often hear parents who will tell me they know more about the technology than I do. Stop saying that. They know how to use it, right? They know how to turn on your phone and probably can fix it for you, right, when it's broken. But that doesn't mean that they actually know how to use it and when to use it. Just because they know to use the technology doesn't mean that they're using it effectively or well or appropriately. You don't have to be an expert to do that. Have an open dialogue and discussion. And then offer up some solutions. I've got a few solutions that I'm happy to share with you, and there are certainly others. One of the things that you can do from a productivity perspective is to set aside 2 hours a day in the morning, another 2 hours in the afternoon, and say, do not interrupt me with text messages and all of these other things. Unless it's an emergency, I need time to be productive. That's one thing you can do. It's not easy. It means telling your colleagues or your schoolmates, I have to do this work. Please do not interrupt me. But nevertheless, it is important to do. Okay? Another thing is maybe at family time, whatever that time is, maybe it's at the dinner table. Say, we just had a long conversation about this. Please don't break out your phone during meals. Or let's do something together. Let's go for a hike together. Let's walk in the mountains. Whatever it is, walk through the hills here and enjoy some outdoor time. And for some of you, you may actually come to the conclusion that you don't need it. Maybe you can get rid of a social media account. Maybe you don't have to check your email obsessively at home or your Slack channel at work 24 hours a day. That's all I'm asking you to do. Be aware, think critically, process some possible solutions. Now, in order to end this talk, one of the things that I think is important to realize is that there are actually benefits to technology, right? It's very doom and gloom up here, and so everybody's like, wow, it's so depressing, right? Well, so I want to end with my mother, actually. I got my mother a laptop computer, got her set up on email. I don't need email, Deano, she says. Okay, Mom. I don't need Facebook. Okay, Mom. I get her set up on Facebook. And what's cool about this, after the initial resistance, is that my mother now communicates with all of her family and friends on a regular basis. She lives alone now. My father passed in 1999. She's been alone for a long time. So it's her outlet to the rest of the world. She has organized in-face sessions, meetings, reunions with relatives and friends she hasn't seen in decades. She meets them in real life. So it helps organize her. And then my favorite example of all, she gets to see her great-grandson and her great-granddaughter grow up, even though they are several states away. She gets to Skype with them. That's a wonderful use of the technology. It's not all about fear and doom and gloom. There are some benefits. Doesn't mean you have to get rid of it all. I just want you to process and think about it. So I'll end with Abby. Guess what? Abby actually underestimated her hours. Abby had about 150 plus. But what was interesting is in talking to her teacher, it turns out Abby's actually a really happy, well-adjusted student. And so she looked at me and she said, do I have to be afraid? And I said, no, you don't have to be afraid. But you're now armed with the ability to have a dialogue with your parents and your teachers and to be able to have an understanding of what the impacts are of this technology. And that's what I really want you to be able to do today. Thank you.